Okay, guys, welcome to the Monday webinar. Some great stuff to talk about here. Let's get right down to the nitty gritty. Okay, so a couple of things to actually mention. First of all, this is always a good time because we're right at the beginning of the week, so this is a great time to get a free trial to the trading group. You can get a 5-day free trial right here. When you click on this page, that's going to take you to the welcome page, and you can see you can get a free trial to either one. The bottom one is just the access to the website and all of that. The top one is the more expensive one that gives you access to the website, which has all of our trades and recordings, as well as the live trade room, which we're in right now. Remember, we meet twice a day, all week long. Tons of good stuff to talk about and cover, so the live trading room is a huge benefit. And then I need to put the link in here. I sent it out on email for a little while longer. I'm not going to keep this available forever, but for another couple of days, you can get an annual membership, which saves you about 33 and 36%, I think, with an annual kind of bundle on some of the other memberships. So 37 a month ends up being less than 30, 79 a month ends up being less than $50 a month, but you have to pay for a year in advance. So you can get that. Annual memberships are all available, and I will send out that link as well. Again, one more time in email, and then I'll stop talking about it because it's only going to be available for a couple more days. There's a link right there. Okay, guys, let's get into this trading stuff. Today is definitely going to be a big, interesting, crazy day. So we're going to talk about a few things that we'll be doing here. Okay, so look at the calendar. I always like to look at the calendar for the first of the week and kind of just make sure I know what is ahead of us. So we've seen a good little bit of news already this week. Tonight, definitely a big deal. In about 5.5 hours from right now, we're going to have Australian interest rate announcements. So it's going to be the rate statement and then the actual rate announcement. So that's coming up in several hours. And so we've got an Aussie New Zealand trade in the works, and that's pretty important. Can you guys still hear me okay? I'm getting a little bit of an internet weird thing. Am I still coming through for everybody? Loud and clear-ish? Okay, good. Something just disconnected, and I don't know what that was all about, but okay, excellent. So anyways, the Aussie interest rate stuff is going to be crazy. We're looking at a couple of Aussie pairs, and so this could give us great setups, or it could kind of run some of our maturing setups a little bit soon, so we'll just see how that goes. Going into tomorrow, a little bit of UK news. As we know, we have a bank holiday for Canada, which is a big deal because we're looking at some Euro CAD, some CAD Swiss franc, and a whole bunch of CAD trades. So that's worth keeping an eye on. A little bit of US news tomorrow morning. We'll be live in the chat as always. And then we have trade balance for Australia tomorrow night. And then, as we go into Wednesday and Thursday, we have a whole bunch of stuff happening. So Wednesday, we have ADP numbers for the U.S., the Fed chairwoman is speaking in the U.S., Bank of Australia, there will be a speech out of there, and then more Aussie news, retail sales, and so on later on that evening. Thursday, I don't know what is going on with this website, but it is going crazy. Thursday, we have the ECB press conference. So that's always a big, huge, crazy big deal, and we're going to keep an eye on that. Of course, there's interest rate announcements from Europe and so on, so we're just going to keep watching that and see how everything goes there. And then, of course, we have non-farm payroll early, so it's on Thursday because Friday's Independence Day and so on in the U.S., and so they're going early, which is pretty weird. They don't do that too often. Usually those bump it into the next week, but that would put us a little bit late. It'd be around the 11th or 12th or whatever of next week, so that'd be a little too late into the month. So they just bumped it up a day early. So every day this week is going to be heavy news. So let's just kind of hang on, get the best setups we can, and kind of just take it from there. Okay, so I'm looking at the euro dollar. I haven't had much of a setup on the euro dollar in several days, but it is starting to get interesting again. We talked about this. The movements were ugly, and so I didn't get into it. We talked about the euro dollar crossing the 23% fib that was at 136.10 and reaching the 38 that was at 136.90, And it took several days for that to happen, but it finally did it. So here is the reach of the 38% fib, or 137. 136.90. I think we had a high. What was our high here? 97, 136.97. So we pretty much got to 137.00. It's pulling back a little bit. I'm not interested in trading this trend on Eurodollar, especially with big news coming up from ECB. I don't know what's going on with those guys. So all we can do is kind of just trade our setup. And when the setup happens, we'll just trade it. And so we have no long-term setups on Eurodollar. No, we don't even have any really medium-term setups, but we do have some shorter-term setups. Eurodollar is looking pretty interesting on the 1 hour chart. You can see that we're just starting to get out there a little bit. We're not super far out, only 55 bars out on the 1 hour chart, but it's starting to look like it's pushed a little bit. It's getting a little extended. Now, one thing we can't forget about is that we have got a nice little bull flag right here. This bull flag is in the works. It's doing great. It's looking great. And so this should be a nice little setup here. That bull flag will probably play out and get us into, hopefully and potentially into this 50% fib, which is around 137.40.50 area. So I'm still looking to see if we're going to hit 137.40.50 on Euro dollar. And then we'll start looking for some major shorts from there. So if it does run up there, hopefully this 1 hour chart will look a little more favorable for us. Again, it's only about, it's less than 60 bars out on the 1 hour chart. And so there's really just no setup there yet, but there could be towards the end of the week. So I will be looking for opportunities to short Eurodollar going into the end of this week, most likely. Now, we do have a little bit of short-term stuff that's looking kind of interesting. We still have this bull flag right here, and that should play out nicely. If this plays out like tonight, and again, this could be a good buy trade. I'm not going to take it. I'm not taking the buy trade on the Eurodollar because I think it's going to be, I don't know, I could be totally wrong, but it just looks like it's going to be too small for me. I think it could run up 30 or 40 pips, and maybe a little more, maybe 50 pips, but not interested really in that kind of a setup at all, to be totally honest. So that's what we could be seeing on Eurodollar, is a nice little bull flag play out. Remember, we got that bull flag on the 1 hour. It's really apparent on the 15-minute chart. And if that spikes up to 137.50, the 1 hour chart gets really interesting to short, and the 15-minute chart, especially if this just heads up, the 15-minute chart will be screaming sell, a huge fat sell. Right now, the last time we touched the 200 moving average on the 15-minute chart was back here, and we're about 140 bars out from the last touch. So it's not crazy overextended yet, but it's definitely getting into that territory. Anything over about 150, about 150 to 200 on 15-minute and 1 hour charts gets really interesting to start trading back towards missed pivots and 200 moving averages. And remember, we have the weekly pivot for Eurodollar about 70 pips below current market price. So if Eurodollar breaks and heads a little bit higher, I will be pretty excited and pretty ready for probably a shorter term trade, 75 pips or so, to trade a little bit of a correction and trade it back down. So that's what I'm going to be looking for on Eurodollar. But overall, I'd love to see this run up into 137.50, and then we could start looking for opportunities to short from there. Remember, we're going into July and August. These are typically times that we do see some runs up on Eurodollar and pound dollar and so on. And we're seeing that happen, but I think there's definitely going to be some nice corrections back down to trade along the way up. And remember, oftentimes things get a little bit kind of consolidated in summertime, and so we'll just be trading some of these corrections, but we've got some really great setups, and Eurodollar around 137.50 should be pretty exciting. Okay, pound dollar. I have been screaming pound dollar that we are going to be able to trade some nice corrections. We've got a trade, we've got a hedge. We're looking as soon as possible to dump that hedge and add another short. The daily chart is just getting, literally it's getting ridiculous. The daily chart now is 200 and about 263 bars out. That's craziness. And it's at the top of this really big rising wedge. So this is a big rising wedge that's like, over a year old, and it's right at the top of that. So this is getting super interesting. I'm like really, really interested in shorting pound dollar really close to where it is. But here's what we have to wait for just to play it safe. It looks really great here. Everything's looking really good. Remember, it's going to have a little bull flag as well. So if we break that high, it's just going to continue trucking on up a little bit more, and that'll be even better. But we've got to let it mature just a little bit more. Remember, our 4-hour chart on pound dollar, last touch is back there about 80 bars. So 4 hours getting interesting, but it's not totally there yet. I'd like to see this spend a little more time kind of crawling up this area, staying above 170, 100, and then we'll start looking for those shorts and those opportunities to trade this back down. And 1 hour chart is a little better than it has been lately, but it's still only 64, 65 bars out. So we've got plenty of time to let this 1 hour and 4 hour develop a little bit more. So another day or so, and pound dollar could be a really nice opportunity to short as well, especially if it heads a little bit higher. Non-farm payroll could be a big catalyst for this dollar correction that we're looking for, and I suspect that that's probably what will happen. We're going to see a pretty nice spike down, I would guess, on euro dollar, pound dollar pairs during non-farm payroll, if I had to take a wild guess. So that's what's going on with pound dollar. Again, it's not giving us much on any other time frame. It's just 1 hour's looking okay, 4 hours looking a little bit better, and then the daily chart is so overextended, it's ridiculous. So we're just waiting for those lower time frames to play out before we add that additional short. And Adrian, your question: would I enter before non-farm payroll? Absolutely. Definitely, I definitely would. I wouldn't necessarily recommend everybody do that. I would be okay with, kind of getting stopped out or letting it run a bit more. It just kind of depends. But yeah, I would absolutely enter before non-farm payroll. But it's really going to depend on the setup. If it looks great, then I'll tell everyone to jump into it and we'll attack. But we need to kind of see how markets are looking those couple of minutes before non-farm payroll. A couple of hours, actually. Excuse me. Okay, Aussie dollar is getting interesting. This is just a side note. I haven't been doing much on Aussie dollar, and it's just kind of double topping here a little bit. I think we could start to see a little bit of a move down on this Aussie dollar sooner than later, but it just doesn't want to make that big move yet. Now remember, on this run up right here, it hasn't broken that high, which was 94.60. And it has crossed the 23% fib several times and not reached the 38% fib, that exact move that the euro dollar just did. And we have really good probabilities of those trades playing out when they do happen. So I'm starting to get pretty interested in shorting the Aussie dollar down towards 91.50 area, and I think we could see that coming sooner than later. We're not too far out on the 1 hour chart. The 4 hour is getting a good bit more interesting. We're 110 bars out on the 4 hour chart, and the 1 hour chart is pretty choppy, but overall it's a decent looking setup, and the Aussie dollar it could very likely play out with the news tonight and run all the way down to that 92.50 area. We could see a major drop tonight because it's starting to get to that area on some of these lower time frames. But if it breaks this high, if it breaks 94.60, then, which is not super far away, 25 pips away, if it breaks that, then we could really start getting some interesting correction trades, some shorts to start trading the Aussie dollar back down. So we just have to see how the news goes. I don't have any pending orders. I don't have any really exciting entries on that one yet. Okay, dollar CAD is looking great. Our dollar CAD filled. Remember, we were looking for entries to buy between 106.65 and 106.85 area, and it finally hit the lowest part of that, and it even dipped a little bit lower. We had a low down there at 106.47. Really spiked down with that end of month action that we saw today. So remember, end of month always gets pretty busy, pretty crazy, lots of volatility, and so we saw that happen. But it held pretty well. It hit that 38% fib, so same kind of setup. We had this big run up here I think we can probably see it a little bit better on a weekly chart. But this big run up right there, across the 23% fib, all the way back here at almost 10900. And so we fully expected that run into the 38% fib, which it has just touched. So now what we're looking to do is just hold on to our long. It's sitting right in the middle of our entry zone right now. And everything's looking pretty great. We've got some nice missed pivots up here. We have last week's pivot. That's looking super awesome. And then we have a great looking chart. The 4 hours almost 90 bars out, and the 1 hour is just a whole bunch away. So we're just about 200 bars out on the 1 hour chart. So I'd say we're pretty good to go on this trade. I think our dollar CAD trade is going to turn out really, really nice. And we'll just let it play out over the next several hours, couple of days. We'll just see where it goes. But dollar CAD's looking good. We're already long, and everything is just looking good so far. The one thing that we might do is move up our stop/hedge area, probably 20 pips. Just kind of minimize that, keep those parameters really tight. I'll feel pretty good about that. So that should be a nice little move there. And there you have it. Euro Aussie is looking interesting. It's just breaking out of this big falling wedge. So I'm slowly getting a little bit bullish. Euro Aussie. We have this huge gap on the daily, or excuse me, on the 4 hour chart. If this pulls back down and gives us a nice opportunity to enter against 143, 50, 75 area, I'll take it. But I think it's not much of a setup for the moment. We need to get it lower so that we could make that falling wedge breakout a little bit more meaningful and a little less risky. So I'm just kind of sitting tight on Euro Aussie, not doing anything for the moment, but I do think there's pretty decent chance of a longer term move up. As far as what it does in the short term, I have no idea. If it makes its way back down, we'll take a long entry. And if it just continues higher, then so be it. We'll let it ride. We'll let it go. Also in the direction, since we're long dollar CAD, we're looking for some Canadian weakness for the moment. We also have a little bit of an extended chart here on the CAD Swiss franc. So this is about 100 bars out on the 4 hour chart. And we could see some nice little runs lower, some nice little pushes lower. We have a couple of missed pivots here on CAD Swiss franc on the daily chart. You can see we have several daily pivots and a missed weekly pivot. It's basically played out all the upside movement that we would expect. And so that has kind of happened. So I think that this CAD Swiss franc could be starting to work its way back down. You can see these last couple of hits here on the trend line. It's right back down to that area. And we've got a little bit of a rising wedge, which is, as you know, my favorite pattern. So that rising wedge is so great. So if this thing starts to break out and we start to get back below 8,300, I'm probably going to be looking for some opportunities to short CAD Swiss franc. It's a nice little setup. We have a nice little gap on the 200 moving average 4 hour chart. So I honestly don't expect a major move on this thing. I think we could probably get about 100 pips out of it. But 100 pips is pretty good, especially if this makes one more run higher. If this gets up into 83, 50, 60, 70 area, then I'll start to get pretty excited about that short. Trading the breakout, I think, will work as well, but it won't be as good of a setup as we'd like to see. So I'm just watching this, but I do think we have a pretty good opportunity for a CAD Swiss franc short sometime this week. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Okay, we had a little bit of a nail biter with our Aussie New Zealand. We've been long Aussie New Zealand for several days, and it was in some decent profit, and then it's pulled back, and so on and so forth. I see the notes there. Aussie New Zealand, we are in from 107.75, and we moved our stops around. We did a couple of things, and it's still a really great setup. It's still a really super excellent setup. The only risk that we have is the huge, crazy volatility that we could see with the Aussie central bank news that's coming in the next several hours. So What I'm probably going to do is close my personal position at break even. I'll definitely let you guys know when and if I do that. But I think I'm probably just going to get out of this Aussie New Zealand before the news hits at break even, or be down a couple of pips, 5 or 10 pips. We're down less than 10 pips right now, and just let that news hit, because although it could make a really nice run up, which it could very likely do because we have such a great setup on this 4-hour chart, it could also make a really nice spike down and give us an even better opportunity to enter that long once again. So again, I think I'll probably get out of this one, let the news hit, and then look for re-entries after the news. But I still think we have a great opportunity to hit some of these upper levels, these 10900s on Aussie New Zealand, and so on. I think there's some really great opportunity there. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. I really like the Euro CAD. The Euro CAD's made a decent little run on this short-term movement right here. Not crazy. It's up 75 pips or so off this lowest point of the last month and change. That takes us into a low of the last several months, actually. We have this nice falling wedge you can see here on the 4-hour chart. You see it on the daily chart. We have such a great setup on this on this Euro CAD. We're 230 bars out on the 4-hour chart. So this is just a great setup. Just a super, super good setup. I want to see it pull back, though. I want to see the Euro CAD get back down around 140, 145, 50, 75 area would be pretty good for me. If we saw even 145, 75, I'd feel pretty good about that. That only puts us 30 plus pips from this low, gives us a nice area to jump out if it heads down, and we have tons of upside potential on this move. So I really like this setup. I really like getting long Euro CAD, and we will be looking to do that later on into the week if it plays out the way that we're looking. Just a quick note, I'm watching the pound CAD, and this thing has just been doing the same thing over and over again. It's just riding this little trend line, and I think we're going to run back up and test it. We might break it. We might have an opportunity to get short around 8,500 to trade it down to the 200 moving average / 23% fib area. So we're going to keep an eye on that, but I don't suspect we'll have much of a trade for another couple of days to even a week. Okay, let's get to the exciting, crazy stuff here. This Euro Pound, we were in the Euro Pound earlier. We ended up just closing it out with a small profit because I'm just having a heck of a time imagining myself in a world where I'm long Euro, short Pound. And I know I tell you guys to trust my setup and to trust everything that we look for, and I trust it completely, but still I'm having a hard time swallowing this one. So I'm going to watch this Euro, and I'm going to watch it bounce around a little bit, and I'm absolutely going to be looking to get long again Euro Pound. I just want to make sure that it's one of those setups that's so ridiculously obvious, for the setup that we're looking for, that we just physically cannot stop ourselves from taking it. And it's not quite there yet. It's pretty darn close. 4-hour chart is out 230 bars. That's pretty amazing. Daily chart, and again, this is on the Euro Pound, which these are big extended moves. 80 bars out on Euro on daily chart. The 1 hour did get hit, and it's hopping around there, but the daily and 4-hour are looking great. And so if this continues down a little bit more, if we get a double bottom around 79.50, then at that point I'll be helpless to stop myself from getting in, and we'll be getting long Euro Pound at that point. So it's looking great. It's looking awesome. I love the setup. I'm just going to wait, and later on this week we will be looking for opportunities to get long Euro Pound. Okay, guys, sorry to buzz through so much of this stuff, but there's just great setups everywhere. New Zealand dollar is looking good. Rising wedge right here. Love that setup. The 4-hour chart's getting pretty interesting. We're over 80 bars out. Nothing on the 1 hour yet, but it's working its way there. We're over 80 bars out as well. Daily is giving us nothing, but it's having a hard time at these highs. Remember, we have the highs at 88.40, and those are like 20, 30, 40-year highs on New Zealand dollars. So I'm just looking for one more push higher. If we can touch those highs, if we can double top with that with that 88.40 area, then I'm so excited about shorting this thing, because a 4-hour chart at that point will look amazing. Everything will look amazing, and we'll be looking to get into that. So again, probably not today or tomorrow, but later this week we will be looking to get short New Zealand dollar, US dollar. So that's going to be a great little setup. Last but not least, well, a couple last but not least, pound yen still looks great on the daily chart. Still waiting for 4-hour or 1-hour charts. The 4-hour chart's getting a little more interesting, 75 bars out, still lots to go. 1-hour chart giving us nothing, so pound yen could be later this week, like super later this week or early next week, so I'm not really counting anything there. And then one quick note, Aussie CAD. Remember, this is all recorded. I know I'm buzzing through this kind of quick, but you can kind of pause and stop and look at some of these. Aussie CAD, there's just one setup that I'm looking for in the Aussie CAD, and that is if it bottoms out and hits this 200 moving average slash that parity area, which is about the $1 even between Australian dollar and Canadian dollar. We hit that, we're about 60 pips above that, almost 70 pips above that. If we double bottom right there, I will pretty much without a doubt be getting long Aussie CAD, because if that happens before it runs up much higher, as long as it doesn't run up too much higher, that's going to be a great trade. And if that happens, we're going to have, right now we're almost 160 bars out on the 1-hour chart. So if this makes one more little stab at that parity level, then we are super excited about getting long Aussie CAD. Should be such an awesome setup. So that's what I'm looking for there. I'll look at, what was that, Aussie Swiss franc. Let me just see what I have on this guy real quick. So there looks like there's some interesting price patterns, but I can see that quickly that I don't have a setup at all on Aussie Swiss franc. So no setup for me. There's no moving average, nothing too crazy on the pivot. So nothing there for me yet, but we can definitely keep an eye on that one. Okay, so those are some of the things I'm looking for. Please send over your questions, comments right now. Let me get this recording posted immediately.